To celebrate my granddaughter Cynthia's acceptance into high school, we decided to go on a family trip to a spa. The day before the trip, everyone stayed at our house, and I had the rare opportunity to talk alone with my daughter Catherine that night. Our conversation was aimless, but I felt most comfortable when I was with Catherine. After having a little drink, Catherine said, "I'm going to bed," and went back to her room. As I was about to go to bed myself, I noticed Cynthia's planner, which she seemed to have taken out of her bag and forgotten, lying in the corner of the empty living room. I picked it up, thinking I should give it to her tomorrow, and saw a small spider under it. Startled, I dropped the planner. The page that accidentally opened was marked with the date of our family trip tomorrow, labeled Family Collapse Day. Family collapse? Unable to understand the meaning of those words, I bent down to pick up the planner when Cynthia appeared behind me, looking flustered as she snatched it away. Her unusual behavior made me blurt out, "What does family collapse mean?" Cynthia quietly took an apple juice from the refrigerator in the kitchen, poured it into a glass, and took a sip. The house was already quiet, and the kitchen was dark, with only a small fluorescent light above the sink. Under that light, Cynthia turned around and looked into my eyes, then dropped her gaze without saying a word. Her expression, like a portrait, seemed lonely and sad. Just as Cynthia was about to open her mouth slightly, Catherine peeked out from the bedroom and advised, "It's early tomorrow, so go to bed." Cynthia and I exchanged glances, nodded quietly, and said, "Good night" to each other. That night, I couldn't sleep well, thinking about the meaning of the words Family Collapse Day. My name is Nancy Miller, 63 years old. My husband, who is 5 years younger than me, has always been very conscious of being the younger husband since we met. There was a time when I was proud of having a younger husband. Catherine never warmed up to him since she was little. My husband also seemed uninterested in his daughter, often staying in his room on holidays, absorbed in his hobby of building plastic models. I felt sorry for Catherine and tried to interact with her as much as I could. During meals, Catherine would occasionally glance at her father. In her gaze, there seemed to be a clear sense of disdain and a slight hint of expectation. I think Catherine wanted to play with her father. It was only later that I realized she couldn't express it well. Since my 30s, I feel like my life has been consumed by my work. By the time Catherine became an adult, I was mentally exhausted and ended up retiring, but I think I didn't take care of her enough when she was young. My young husband's income was unstable at the beginning of our marriage, and I desperately wanted money to ensure Catherine could live comfortably. I truly believed that money could make Catherine happy. My husband prioritized his hobbies over Catherine. Catherine didn't like seeing her father always playing games, and from her teenage years, she maintained a cold attitude towards him. I often argued with my husband, telling him to stop playing games, as he seemed to have no sense of crisis about his childish position in the family. But he would always give the same excuse.
"I work for the family. What's wrong with spending my time at home as I like?"
I hated seeing him always playing games, but my feelings never got through to him. When Catherine got married and left home, I felt completely alone. Watching boring TV in the empty living room, I couldn't help but want to call her. "Hey, Catherine? How are you doing?"
"I'm fine, so don't call me unless you need something."
Whenever I called Catherine, she always responded coldly. After hanging up, I would fall into self-loathing, thinking that Catherine's coldness towards me was because I had made her feel lonely when she was young. My husband was always absorbed in his own world. After plastic models and games, he became interested in making dioramas, and his room had a unique atmosphere. Gradually, I stopped expecting anything from him. I stopped inviting him to go out and stopped asking him to take me shopping. As a result, he immersed himself in his hobbies like a fish in water, and we stopped having any meaningful conversations at home. Even so, he worked hard every month. His salary was deposited into our account, and he would say my homemade meals were delicious. I didn't know how to express the dissatisfaction that welled up inside me and couldn't talk to anyone about it. That's why I might have depended on Catherine, who must have shared my dissatisfaction with her father. Catherine, after getting married, lived in an apartment within biking distance. She married a man named Alex, and the following year, my granddaughter Cynthia was born. I thought Catherine would come back to our house after Cynthia was born, but she didn't. Neither did she rely on Alex's parents. Instead, both Alex and Catherine took parental leave at the same time. Knowing that both of them, as full-time employees, were taking a break from work to focus on childcare, I couldn't help but worry and called frequently. Catherine rarely answered the phone. After several attempts, when she finally picked up, I would ask, "How are you doing?"
Yeah, I'm okay.
She would reply in a flat tone. I had hoped that Catherine would ask for help, saying she was tired from childcare, but she never did. Why won't she rely on me? After hanging up, standing alone in the empty living room, I felt overwhelmingly lonely. Those days continued until Cynthia turned 3, and then everything changed. Although Alex had already returned to work, Catherine was about to return to her job as well. She asked me to take Cynthia to and from kindergarten and look after her until she got home. At that time, I was working part-time as a cashier at a nearby supermarket, but I quit to take Cynthia to and from kindergarten. Cynthia had a habit of looking deeply into people's eyes with her big eyes, as if trying to understand their feelings. While walking home with Cynthia after kindergarten, holding her hand, she suddenly started crying without saying a word. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" Cynthia pouted, shook her head slightly, and wiped her tears. She gripped my hand tightly. "What's wrong? Does something hurt? Did something happen at kindergarten?" It was only her 3rd day at kindergarten. Cynthia, with her eyes red from crying, kept looking at me. "Why? Why won't you tell me anything?" On the way home, we took a detour and walked hand in hand. We sat on a bench in a large nearby park, feeling the warm April breeze on our skin. A yellow mimosa tree planted nearby was slightly wilted, its flowers drooping towards the ground.
"Grandma, I want to eat at your house,"
Cynthia said in a small voice. Her words made my heart swell with warmth, and I hugged her tightly. How adorable she is. Quiet and reserved, Cynthia always spends her time at home reading encyclopedias and books. I respected her personality and didn't force her to play physical games. Instead, I read novels beside her. This natural, almost air-like relationship continued, and even now, as Cynthia is in her 3rd year of middle school, She still comes to our house for dinner before going back home. Although Cynthia had good grades without attending cram school, she seemed unfocused on her studies as the entrance exams approached. She studied in the living room until dinner was ready after school. While I was cooking, I glanced at Cynthia and saw her staring blankly at the wall. "Cynthia, what's wrong? Are you okay?" She looked at me with her vacant eyes, hesitated for a moment, and then shook her head slightly. I thought, she's still the same. Whenever something bothers her, Cynthia retreats into her own world, as if closing herself off in a shell that allows no one to enter. I find this aspect of Cynthia endearing. I believe she has a strong heart and will face any challenges on her own. Eventually, Cynthia passed the entrance exams for her backup high school and her first choice school. Catherine called me for the first time in a while.
Cynthia is amazing. She got into her first choice high school on the first try,
she said excitedly. I couldn't help but smile at Catherine's enthusiastic tone. Then she invited me on a family trip to celebrate Cynthia's success. After finishing her entrance exam studies, Cynthia seemed a bit relaxed and was absent-mindedly gazing at the handmade swag hanging in my house.
"What's that?"
she asked. "It's a swag. It's a bunch of flowers and leaves tied together and hung on the wall." "A friend gave it to me," I replied. I was delighted that Cynthia noticed and pointed out the swag featuring yellow mimosas hanging on the wall for the first time. My husband, who spends most of his time playing games in his room except during meals, never pays attention to changes in the living room or the flowers I put up. I'm looking forward to the trip. Catherine and Alex have always been too busy with work to go on a trip, and I hope I won't be a bother, I said. Cynthia responded indifferently.
"Yes."
The day before the family trip to a spa, Catherine's entire family stayed at my house. On the day of the trip, my husband planned to rent a car early in the morning and drive us to our destination. That night, I had the rare opportunity to talk alone with Catherine. We talked about her job, Alex's job, the quirky neighbor who lives nearby, and the new home improvement store that recently opened. Our conversation was aimless, but I felt most comfortable when I was with Catherine. While Cynthia was taking a bath, I took out the present I had prepared for tonight from the closet. Catherine, sipping a low-alcohol hard seltzer, asked,
"Is that for Cynthia's school entrance celebration?"
"It's a bag from this brand that Cynthia has wanted for a long time," I replied. It was a backpack from a popular outdoor brand, and Cynthia always carried a sports brand backpack. Catherine looked a bit surprised and glanced at the mimosa hanging on the wall.
"I didn't know Cynthia wanted a branded bag,"
she said. Sometimes when we go shopping together, she follows people with bags from this brand with her eyes. She doesn't say she wants it, but you can tell from her gaze, I explained. Catherine looked at me, then gulped down the remaining bit of her drink and said, "I'm going to bed," before heading to the bedroom. As she passed Cynthia, who had just finished her bath, I handed Cynthia the backpack as a present. With her hair still wrapped in a towel, Cynthia hugged the backpack and gave a small smile. She began transferring the contents from her old bag to the new one. When I returned to the living room after my bath, everyone else had already gone to bed. In the corner of the empty living room, I noticed Cynthia's planner, which she seemed to have taken out of her bag and forgotten. I picked it up, intending to give it to her tomorrow, and saw a small spider underneath. Startled, I dropped the planner. The page that accidentally opened was marked with the date of our family trip tomorrow, labeled Family Collapse Day. Family collapse? Unable to understand the meaning of those words, I bent down to pick up the planner when Cynthia appeared behind me, looking flustered as she snatched it away. Her unusual behavior made me blurt out, "What does family collapse mean?" Cynthia quietly took an apple juice from the refrigerator in the kitchen, poured it into a glass, and took a sip. The house was already quiet, and the kitchen was dark, with only a small fluorescent light above the sink. Under that light, Cynthia turned around and looked into my eyes, then dropped her gaze without saying a word. Her expression, like a portrait, seemed lonely and sad. Just as Cynthia was about to open her mouth slightly, Catherine peeked out from the bedroom and advised, "It's early tomorrow, so go to bed." Cynthia and I exchanged glances, nodded quietly, and said, "Good night" to each other. That night, I couldn't sleep well, thinking about the meaning of the words Family Collapse Day. The next morning, we all got into the rental car my husband had borrowed and headed to our destination. The roads were a bit crowded due to the holiday, but the weather was beautiful, with the clear blue sky stretching over the distant mountains. I felt nostalgic bringing my granddaughter to the hotel where I had taken Catherine several times when she was young. Soaking in the milky white hot spring, I immersed myself up to my shoulders. Next to me, Cynthia was also soaking in the bath, washing her face with the warm water. "If you have any worries, you can talk to me." In the open-air bath under the cloudless blue sky, it seemed like the only thing I could say to Cynthia. After the bath, we enjoyed a delicious meal and returned to our room. At Catherine's suggestion, we all decided to stay in the same room, so the 5 of us slept together. My husband was having a drink with Alex for the first time in a while. At night, in the spacious area at the back of the room, there was a pair of chairs and a table. Cynthia was absent-mindedly gazing out the window. I sat down in front of her and handed her an orange juice. Without saying anything, I also looked out the window. There were many lodging facilities, and the moon was visible above the buildings. Alex, perhaps a bit tipsy, put his arm around Cynthia's shoulder and started laughing.
"Cynthia, you've really done well. Keep up the good work with your studies."
"That's right. You'll be living in a dorm at school, won't you? We won't be able to have dinner together like we used to," I added. Since Catherine got married and left home, I had felt lonely. Taking care of my granddaughter Cynthia had been a joy, but thinking that it was coming to an end made me feel lonely again. Alex and Catherine, looking happy, encouraged Cynthia, who was still staring out the window. "Keep doing your best," they said. Catherine gently patted Cynthia's head.
Live your life to the fullest.
Live your life to the fullest? What heavy words, I thought. As I pondered the meaning of Catherine's words, Cynthia suddenly started laughing. I quickly realized it wasn't because she was happy. With a mocking smile, she said,
"It's really funny."
But her laughter sounded anything but joyful. When Cynthia stopped laughing, everyone, including myself, fell silent, taken aback by her unusual behavior.
"I don't care anymore. I'm going to spill everything."
Huh?
Cynthia looked at me while sitting down.
Grandma, after this trip, I might not be able to see you anymore or have dinner together, so I'm going to tell you everything.
In the corner of the space by the window, there was a low table with a dimly lit transparent vase holding mimosa flowers. For some reason, I couldn't bear Cynthia's intense gaze and ended up staring at the mimosa in front of me.
After the trip, I'm moving into an apartment. I'll have to do all the housework myself and study too, so I probably won't have any free time until I graduate.
Wait, I thought you were going to live in a dorm for high school. What's going on, Catherine? When I asked Catherine, Alex answered with a smile.
It's for her independence.
Cynthia wants to get a job and move out right after graduating from high school. We think living in an apartment will be better for her future than staying in a dorm.
But still, letting a girl who was just in middle school live alone. Not knowing what the normal standards are these days, I was at a loss for words when Cynthia immediately shouted.
That's not it.
Cynthia raised her voice.
I said I wanted to live at Grandma's house and commute to high school. But Mom and Dad opposed it. They didn't even want me to have dinner with you.
I tilted my head in confusion. That made it sound like Catherine and Alex didn't want me to be involved with Cynthia.
Mom and Dad thought I might reveal their secrets to you, so they didn't want me to be too involved with you.
Cynthia, stop talking.
Catherine shouted. Cynthia yelled back.
Shut up. Both Mom and Dad have been having affairs since I was little. Yes, ever since I was in kindergarten.
I felt like I had been hit over the head by Cynthia's words. Catherine having an affair? Alex too? I couldn't comprehend what was happening.
The reason I've always been left at Grandma's house isn't just because you were busy with work, but because you were meeting with your lovers.
Alex, clearly agitated, denied Cynthia's words while pointlessly opening the window. The wind blew in, making the curtains sway. Gripping the moving curtains, Alex fell silent.
You're misunderstanding, Cynthia. We were thinking about your future.
There's no need to lie in front of Grandma. After treating me like this, don't pretend to be good parents.
Apparently, Catherine and Alex had been having affairs for a long time, since Cynthia was in kindergarten, and Cynthia had known about it from the beginning. As a child, Cynthia had a vague sense that her parents were doing something wrong that needed to be kept secret, so she couldn't talk to me about it. Catherine never took care of Cynthia's meals or personal needs. While Cynthia managed to prepare for school and do laundry, she wasn't allowed to handle fire, so she couldn't cook. That's why having dinner at my house became a daily routine, a habit that continued until now.
Did you know? When I was in elementary school, Mom would talk to her lover on the phone, pretending it was a normal conversation, even with me right next to her. Didn't she realize her voice sounded different?
Cynthia's eyes were filled with deep hatred. Catherine was speechless, and Alex continued to stare out the window. Cynthia's eyes held a quiet anger, with deep wrinkles forming on her forehead and the corners of her mouth slightly twisted.
Once I leave home, you two will get divorced and remarry someone else, right? That's why I'm in the way. Fine. I've always been alone. I won't be lonely now.
The only sound in the room was Cynthia's occasional heavy breathing, slightly trembling. I thought that Cynthia's dissatisfaction with the painful reality was exploding inside her. She said she had always been alone. I see. I was always just beside her, but that wasn't enough. Quiet Cynthia must have been deeply hurt and troubled by her parents' affairs since she was young, sinking into her own world. Without realizing it, I had always been focused on my own loneliness. Even though Cynthia, who was lonelier and crying inside, was right next to me.
Well, in situations like this, it's basically the mother's fault. Whether she had an affair or not, it's Catherine's fault for neglecting her daughter.
It's your fault for caring only about appearances and not agreeing to a divorce. And despite caring about appearances, you didn't get promoted and ended up a miserable man.
I stood up and called out Catherine and Alex's names, raising my voice like that was something I wasn't used to. My body felt hot, and my knees were trembling. My throat was tight, and I couldn't get the first words out. But with Cynthia looking at me with anxious eyes, I couldn't just run away without saying anything. Parents must put their children first. No matter the situation, it's a parent's duty to prioritize their children and protect the family. Do you have any idea how much Cynthia was hurt knowing her parents were having affairs? Can you imagine how sad she was? I shouted in anger, realizing that even I couldn't fully imagine it. No one here could understand Cynthia's feelings. That's why Catherine and Alex continued their actions without considering the impact on her. Catherine and Alex looked bewildered by my anger. I gathered my resolve and spoke. I can't leave Cynthia with such selfish parents. I will protect her. I will take Cynthia in. She won't live in an apartment. She can go to high school from my house. The three of them were taken aback by my declaration, but soon Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. Catherine and Alex, looking confused, fell silent. I held the silently crying Cynthia tightly in my arms. Cynthia, you should become my daughter. From now on, I'll always be by your side. Cynthia, embraced in my arms, didn't want to let go. The return trip from the vacation was incredibly awkward. Only my husband, sitting in the driver's seat, was cheerfully humming and saying things like, "The spa felt so good," or "What should I get as a souvenir for a female staff member at work?" He had slept through the whole ordeal. In a way, he has quite a remarkable personality. After returning from the trip, I immediately invited Cynthia to our home. My husband looked puzzled but casually said,
She can use the room Catherine used.
Although I had impulsively declared that I would take Cynthia in as my own child, my husband researched and handled most of the procedures. When everything was settled, I expressed my deep gratitude to my easygoing husband deeply, and he smiled.
I love you, so I can do my best for you.
Despite spending his younger years playing games and building models, he always gets things done. And being a younger husband, he's always youthful and handsome, which makes me a bit envious. Cynthia started commuting to school by train from our house. She's still a child, and I want her to focus on her studies, extracurricular activities, and enjoying a fulfilling school life, leaving the adult responsibilities to us. Catherine and Alex didn't get divorced after all. It seems their lovers weren't interested in remarrying, so their ambiguous relationships continued as before. However, one day, their affairs were discovered at work, and they both resigned. I found it hard to understand why they had to resign because of the affairs, but apparently, the information had spread to many of their business associates, and a significant number of people knew about the affairs. In the end, Catherine was left alone after her lover abandoned her. One day, I received a call from Catherine.
Let me see Cynthia. She's my daughter. I want to live with you and her at your house.
No, Catherine, you can't. You wanted Cynthia to live in an apartment instead of a dorm. You didn't want her in a regulated and protected environment. You wanted her in an apartment so you could call her whenever you wanted. I understand you're lonely, but you're different from me. Catherine, it doesn't seem like you truly wish for Cynthia's happiness. That's why I can't allow it. I replied. I had firmly decided not to forgive Catherine. The day I forgive Catherine will be the day Cynthia forgives her. But will that day ever come for Cynthia, who has had to accept the painful reality of her parents' affairs since she was a child? While I was making dinner, I told Cynthia, who was quietly reading a book. Catherine came by today and mentioned that she had quit her job and that her lover had left her. Cynthia kept her eyes on her book, looking uninterested.
Serves her right,
she said coldly. I realized that it was probably Cynthia who had leaked the information about the affairs to Catherine and Alex's workplace and business partners. I sat down in the living room chair and let out a small sigh. Cynthia, do you realize that parents are not obligated to send their children to college? Once you turn 18, many parents expect their children to move out and become independent. What you did was an act of revenge, a foolish act. But I don't intend to blame you for it. Cynthia, one day you will realize. The day you got into your first choice school, and Catherine called to tell me the news. Catherine was so happy about your acceptance into high school. She was proud and genuinely relieved. I am convinced that, at that moment, I felt a deep motherly love from Catherine. I hope that one day you will be able to forgive her. I stopped making dinner and called out to Cynthia, who was quietly reading a book. My husband was upstairs working on his model kits, and he would stay there until I called him for dinner. Hey, Cynthia, how about we go out for hamburgers? Cynthia quietly closed her book and gave me a small smile. From now on, I will make this child happy. Without calling my husband, I went out to eat with Cynthia. As I fumbled with the door at the entrance and wobbled a bit, Cynthia supported my shoulder. Before I could thank her, she whispered. It was a very small voice, but it reached my ears clearly.
Thank you.
I will never forget the gentle smile Cynthia showed at that moment.
How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.